The unseen threat. The galaxy had always been a battlefield. Empires fought for power, planets burned, and war was never ending. Among the stars, the strong ruled, and the weak were crushed. For centuries, Earth was ignored. It was a small planet, far from the core worlds, with no real influence. The great empires saw humans as nothing more than another primitive species, useful for trade, but never a threat. That was their first mistake. The Exilari Dominion was one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Their fleet was unmatched, their soldiers fearless, and their weapons deadly. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, enslaved countless species, and stood unchallenged for centuries. When reports came in about a missing patrol fleet near the Outer Rim, the Exilari High Command barely reacted. Pirates, perhaps. A navigation error, nothing to worry about. But then, another fleet disappeared, and another. No distress signals, no wreckage, no survivors. Admiral Varkoth of the Exilari Dominion frowned as he studied the reports. Fleets did not simply vanish without a trace. Something was out there, something dangerous. He ordered a larger fleet to investigate. 100 warships, armed with plasma cannons and energy shields, set course for the dead zone where the missing fleets had last been detected. The ships moved in formation, their sensors scanning for any sign of an enemy. The system they entered was dark, no habitable planets, no stations, only the vast emptiness of space. Then the lights went out. Every ship in the fleet lost power at the same time. Their systems shut down, their engines died, and their weapons fell silent. Panic spread through the crews. The Exilari were warriors, but they had never seen anything like this before. Admiral Varkoth tried to hail command, but the communications were dead. His officers shouted reports of strange shadows moving in the void outside. And then the attack began. Ships vanished into the darkness, one by one. There were no explosions, no debris, just silent destruction. The last transmission received from the fleet was a single terrified voice. "They are here." Back at Exilari High Command, the news sent shockwaves through the Empire. This was no accident. This was no pirate attack. Something was hunting them. Whispers spread through the Galactic elite. Who could be behind this? The Exilari had faced every major power in the galaxy and had never lost a battle. But this enemy was different. There were no demands, no messages, no warnings, only silence. And then the rumors started. A name spoken in fear in the dark corners of the Empire. The Shadow Fleet. A fleet with no home, no traceable origin. Ships that left no heat signature, no transmissions. A ghostly armada that struck without warning and disappeared without a trace. But the Exilari refused to believe in ghosts. They gathered an even larger fleet, 1,000 warships, the largest force ever assembled by the Empire. If this Shadow Fleet was real, they would crush it. The fleet set course for the last known location of their missing ships. They expected a battle. They expected an enemy to reveal itself. But as they entered the void, there was only silence. And then, one by one, their ships started to disappear. The rise of Earth's Shadow Fleet. The Exilari Fleet, 1,000 warships strong, had entered the void. They had come with confidence, with power, believing themselves to be the hunters. But in the darkness, they were prey. One by one, their ships vanished into the abyss. No explosions, no distress calls, just emptiness. Admiral Varkoth, now on his flagship, stood frozen as the impossible happened before his eyes. His fleet, the mightiest in Exilari history, was being erased. His officers shouted over each other, desperately trying to make sense of the chaos. No visual on enemy ships. Weapons offline. We can't fire at what we can't see. Shields are active, but they are useless. Then, something even worse happened. The shadows outside the viewport moved. Years earlier, the birth of the Shadow Fleet. For centuries, Earth had been dismissed as a minor species. Weak, unimportant, barely worth notice. Humanity was allowed to exist, trade, and expand under the watchful eye of the great galactic powers. But humans had learned from history. Every great empire that had ignored them eventually tried to control them. And so, in absolute secrecy, Earth created the Shadow Fleet. It wasn't built in orbit of Earth, where it could be seen. It wasn't built in the Sol system, where spies could report on it. It was built beyond the outer rim, in the cold void where no empire dared to go. While alien warships relied on brute force, humans built something different. Ships without heat signatures, weapons that left no trace, technology that manipulated light, gravity, and energy fields. They built a fleet that was invisible, unstoppable, and utterly terrifying. The galaxy had no idea it existed. Until now. Back to the present. The destruction of the Silari Armada. Admiral Varkov's hands trembled as the last readings came in. Out of 1,000 ships, only 6 remained. The enemy still had not revealed itself. Then, the darkness itself spoke. A message appeared on every remaining Silari screen. No visuals, no voice, just words. You do not belong in the void. Leave. Varkov's mind raced. Who was this enemy? No empire had this kind of power. Then, the final blow came. A single, invisible pulse swept through space. The last 6 Silari warships shut down instantly. Their shields failed. Their engines died. And then, they too were gone. The Exilari Dominion had just lost its greatest fleet, and no one knew who had done it. But the galaxy was about to learn. The first galactic war against Earth. The Exilari Dominion had ruled the stars for centuries. Now, their greatest fleet was gone. Whispers spread like wildfire across the galaxy. An unknown force had wiped out 1,000 warships without a fight, without a trace. No wreckage, no survivors, just silence. A high council of the Exilari convened in a secret war chamber deep within their homeworld. The air was thick with tension as the most powerful beings in the Empire spoke in hushed, fearful tones. "This is not possible," one growled, slamming a fist on the table. "No enemy can defeat us so easily." "The battle records prove it," another counselor muttered. There was no battle. There was only annihilation. Admiral Varkov stood before them, his face grim. "We are no longer the apex predators of this galaxy. Something else has taken that title." For the first time in Xilari history, they were afraid. The search for the phantom enemy. The Xilari could not allow this humiliation to stand. They spread their war fleets across the stars, searching for the unseen enemy. They interrogated spies, raided fringe worlds, and threatened entire civilizations for information. Finally, they found a lead. One single, terrifying piece of intelligence. A name. Earth. A primitive world, dismissed for centuries. A species ignored as weak. But now, the Xilari finally understood. The Shadow Fleet belonged to the humans. This was not a rogue faction. This was not an anomaly. This was war. Earth's answer to the Xilari threat. On the hidden war world of Erebus 9, deep in the black void beyond the outer rim, the highest-ranking officers of the United Terran Defense Force, UTDF, stood around a darkened command table. A single red alert pulsed across the room. The Xilari have declared total war on Earth. General Elias Kane, Supreme Commander of the Shadow Fleet, watched the declaration. The Xilari had broadcast it across the galaxy, expecting Earth to panic, to surrender. Instead, he smiled. "They finally noticed us." A young officer stepped forward. "Sir, shall we prepare for planetary defense?" Kane shook his head. "Defense? No." He turned toward the holographic map, where hundreds of Xilari fleets were gathering. "We attack first." The Shadow Fleet had operated from the darkness for decades, striking only when necessary. But now, Humanity was stepping into the light. The first strike. The war begins. The auxiliary fleets mobilized, preparing for an all-out assault on Earth. They expected resistance. They expected a war fought over years. But they didn't understand what they were up against. Before they could reach their launch points, before they could even begin their attack, the Shadow Fleet struck. The auxiliary armadas vanished in the night, their command ships turned into floating wrecks, their generals eliminated before they could issue orders. The war had started, but Earth had already won. The fall of the auxiliary empire. The galaxy had never seen fear in the auxiliary. Until now. Across the stars, their fleets were crumbling. Armadas of unstoppable warships were being erased before they could even fire a shot. Their admirals, their warlords, vanishing without a trace. They weren't fighting a war. They were being hunted. The Empire's desperate gamble. The Auxiliary High Council had no choice. They activated Protocol Omega, a last resort strategy so desperate it had never been used in their long history. All remaining fleets would retreat to Fortress Prime, their most secure military stronghold, a world surrounded by trillions of tons of armor plating, shielded by a planetary force field, and guarded by 10,000 of their finest warships. Nothing had ever breached Fortress Prime. Nothing ever could. At least that's what they believed. Inside the Shadow Fleet's command center, General Elias Kane studied the auxiliaries' movements. Their fleets were retreating, running back to their fortress like wounded animals. "They think they're safe," one officer muttered. Kane smirked. "Good. That'll make this even more fun." The auxiliary expected a siege. They expected Earth's forces to attack their defenses, to waste time trying to break through their impenetrable walls. But humanity had never fought like other species. They didn't attack walls. They ignored them. The unthinkable happens. On Fortress Prime, the auxiliary watched their sensors with nervous eyes. They had lost contact with every outpost. No enemy ships had been spotted. No fleets had engaged them. But then, something terrifying happened. Their planetary shields shut down. Just like that. One by one, their orbital weapons deactivated. Their security grids blinked out. Their mighty, impenetrable fortress, defenseless. A single message flashed on their screens. "It is over." The auxiliary leaders screamed in panic, but their voices would never leave the war room. Because in that moment, in the very heart of their fortress, the Shadow Fleet was already there. No explosions, no grand battles, just silence. And then the auxiliary empire ceased to exist. The galaxy's new reality. When news of Fortress Prime's fall reached the galactic community, the reaction was immediate. Worlds that had once feared the auxiliary rejoiced. Empires that had once looked down on humanity trembled. Because now, the truth was clear. Earth was no longer in the shadows. They were the new rulers of the stars. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The rise of humanity's dominion. The auxiliary were gone. Their mighty empire, erased in a single, silent stroke. But the galaxy was not at peace. Far from it. The aftermath of annihilation. In the power vacuum left by the auxiliary's fall, chaos erupted across the stars. Former auxiliary colonies declared independence. Rival factions fought for control of the abandoned worlds. And in the center of it all, one name whispered through every communication channel, every war council, every fearful conversation. Humanity. Once dismissed as a primitive species, now they had done the impossible. They had eliminated the galaxy's strongest empire without a full-scale war. No fleets, no sieges, no mass destruction. Just vanishing enemies, fallen leaders, and a fortress that never even had a chance to fight back. Now, the surviving empires had to ask themselves a terrifying question. Would humanity stop? The United Galactic Council's Emergency Summit. On Valthar 7, the remaining major civilizations gathered. The Yilani sovereignty, the Tauran dominion, the Keldzor hierarchy. all powers that had once feared the Xilari. Now, they feared something far worse. A reptilian diplomat hissed, "We must act before Earth takes full control." A towering insectoid delegate clicked its mandibles. "They do not seek war. They have not demanded tribute." A synthetic AI entity flickered into existence. "Perhaps that is what makes them most dangerous. If they desired conquest, we would understand them. But this..." Silence filled the chamber. Then, a deep metallic voice rumbled through the halls. "You misunderstand humanity." The council turned as a lone human representative stepped into the light. Dressed in a dark military uniform, his sharp eyes surveyed the assembled leaders. Admiral Elias Kane had arrived. Humanity's message to the galaxy. Kane stood before the most powerful leaders in the universe. For years, these civilizations had either ignored Earth or looked down upon it. Now, they sat in fear before a single human. He spoke, his voice calm yet unshakable. "We are not conquerors. We are not tyrants. But we do not forget." His eyes burned into the delegates. For centuries, Earth was seen as weak. We were dismissed, mocked, and targeted. The Xilari thought they could wipe us out. He leaned forward. They thought wrong. The chamber was silent. Then Kane delivered his final message. "Earth does not seek war. We do not wish to rule. But if anyone dares to threaten our home again..." His next words sent a chill through the room. "There won't even be ruins left." Then, without another word, Kane turned and walked away. The United Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. The new order of the galaxy. In the following months, something unprecedented happened. Worlds that once opposed Earth now sent peace treaties. Nations that had never spoken to humanity now sought alliances. Not because humanity forced them to, but because they had no choice. Earth had changed the balance of power forever. They were no longer a shadow force. They were the silent rulers of the stars, and the galaxy would never challenge them again. The last enemy of humanity. The galaxy had submitted, not through war, not through diplomacy, but through fear. Humanity had erased the Xilari Empire without a single large-scale battle. Now, every species in the galaxy understood one thing: you do not challenge Earth. And yet, in the depths of space, beyond known star charts, something stirred. Something older than any recorded civilization. Something that had been watching, waiting. And now, it had decided to move. A forgotten transmission. Deep inside Earth's black archive, a forgotten distress signal suddenly reactivated. The message was old, centuries old. A ghostly, desperate voice crackled through the ancient speakers. "This is the colony ship Erebus. We made a mistake. Something is out here, watching us. They were never gone. They just waited for us to reach them. Oh God, they're inside the ship." No. Static. Admiral Elias Kane narrowed his eyes as he listened. The signal's location. The dead zone. An expanse of space that even the Xilari had feared. A region where ships disappeared, where no scans ever returned data. For centuries, it had been ignored. Now humanity was strong enough to investigate. The Ghost Fleet's last journey. A single Shadow Fleet warship, the Oblivion, was dispatched. It carried the most elite soldiers in Earth's history. Their mission: discover the truth behind the dead zone. As the Oblivion entered the dark abyss of unknown space, its crew felt an unnatural stillness. No stars, no signals, no debris. Just void. Then the ship's sensors picked up something. A massive structure, ancient, massive, and pulsing with energy. The Erebus colony ship was still there, floating lifelessly near the alien construct. The moment they approached, all systems shut down. Engines, weapons, communications, something else had taken control. Then, without warning, the ship spoke. "You should not have come." The crew froze, because the voice wasn't alien. It was human. The true masters of the galaxy. Inside the mysterious structure, the Shadow Fleet team made a horrifying discovery. The missing human colonists from centuries ago. They were still alive, but they were different. Pale, silent. Their eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, and they spoke in unison. You think Earth is the strongest force in the galaxy. You are wrong. We were the first to reach this place, and we became something more. Admiral Kane's voice crackled through the comms, demanding answers. The ghostly human smiled. You conquered the galaxy, but we conquered something far greater. The ship's sensors flickered back online, and suddenly, the crew saw what had been hidden in the void. A fleet. No, an armada. Thousands of monstrous warships unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. And at their center, a colossal structure, pulsating with an ancient, terrifying intelligence. Your war has just begun. And with that, every screen on the Oblivion turned to black. Humanity's darkest hour. For the first time in centuries, humanity felt fear. They had conquered the galaxy through intelligence, precision, and raw power. Yet now, standing before them, was something beyond comprehension, an ancient force that had been waiting in the void, unseen and undisturbed. Until now, the unfathomable armada. On board the Oblivion, Admiral Elias Kane watched as thousands of unknown warships flickered into existence. Their designs were alien, and yet unsettlingly familiar, like they had once been something human, or had become something else. Prepare for immediate extraction, Kane ordered, his voice unnaturally calm. The Oblivion's engines roared back to life. But before it could retreat, the fleet moved. Not in a chaotic battle formation, not with hesitation, but with terrifying mechanical precision, like a single conscious entity. And then, they spoke. We are the forgotten. We were here before Earth rose, before your fleets, before your empire. You believe you control the galaxy. You do not understand what you have awakened. And in an instant, they attacked. The Shadow Fleet's last stand. The first strike came without warning. A surge of energy lashed out, striking the Oblivion. Shields buckled. Hull integrity failed in seconds. Weapons fired back, but they phased through the enemy ships like shadows. Nothing connected. Nothing worked. It was like fighting ghosts. They aren't real, a lieutenant shouted. No, Kane whispered, gripping his command chair. They are worse. The Shadow Fleet had faced impossible odds before, but never something that war itself could not defeat. A desperate escape. Kane knew the truth in an instant. The Oblivion would not make it out, but if they didn't warn Earth, humanity would be doomed. Commander, prepare a data burst to High Command. But sir, our long-range transmitters are down. Kane's jaw clenched. There was only one way. A manual data core ejection. A single escape pod, carrying the fleet's final warning, launched toward Earth at faster than light speed. As the armada closed in, Kane stood at the bridge, watching, waiting. His crew understood. None of them would survive. But humanity still had a chance. The message reaches Earth. On Earth, inside the Black Archive, a warning signal flashed red. A high-priority transmission from the Oblivion, marked urgent. The moment analysts decrypted it, every military alarm on Earth went off at once. Generals paled. Admirals stood frozen. Then the message played. Kane's final words. Earth, we are not alone. The galaxy was never truly ours. Something else was always waiting in the dark. And now, it's coming. A final burst of static, then silence. And outside the Sol system, far beyond the last human colony, the void rippled. Something vast and unseen was already moving toward Earth, and it would not stop.